Welcome to Board Game Binge, the place where we bring you bite-sized, bingeable board game content from across the industry. I'm your host, James Staley, and in this episode, we're chatting with Jay Banna of Grinly Games. Jay is a board game enthusiast and entrepreneur with a passion for game design. His debut title, Savage, a Game of Survival, is currently on Kickstarter. Jay, welcome to the binge. How you doing?
Hey James, thanks you for inviting me. I appreciate it.
Oh, it is great to have you on here. I totally geek out over social deduction type games. We're going to get into the games in a second because, oh man, this is right in my wheelhouse. But before I do that, let's dial this clock back and get into the history. So I read somewhere like since 2003 is when you kind of first had the bug kind of bite you on game design. Like, what was that all about? How'd that happen?
So at that time, I got invested into a lot of tabletop style games. Outside of board games, I did traditional trading card games, your typical Magic the Gathering, Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh, a lot of that stuff. And then it transitioned into a lot of tabletop games. And for me, it was just always an escape with things that I always had to personally deal with in my lifestyle.
Mm.
And I've always just embraced that with people who I was close friends with and spent a lot of time with. So I think really like just naming off some games, like I was a big fan for Secret Hitler. I
Yeah.
really enjoyed I'm thinking of Betrayal at House on the Hill. That was actually like the biggest gateway game that I loved.
Yeah.
That got me more into the RPG realm and trying out different types of games.
Oh, nice. And so when did you start actually like tinkering or making your own types of games? Like, was this the first attempt or was there previous attempts you'd done in the past? Like, I imagine since 2003, there must have been some tinkering along the way.
It was actually me creating card games with my friends,
Oh,
and
that's
it was,
cool.
not nothing serious, of course. It was just, oh, let's create our own art. Oh, what if we could do some cool stuff? It
Yeah.
was just taking what we knew and thought, let's just make something different with it and see what it does. And I also did design some games for close friends, like party style games. Like for example, we came up with this game called me and a friend called Liar's Tale.
Mm.
And so the way Liar's Tale works was each person, when they enter your house, they get a truth card and a truth and a liar card. And
Okay.
so you pick a person. Everyone starts with 3 Mardi Gras beads. They put them around their necks, and the goal is whoever has the most Mardi Gras beads at the end of the day gets a trophy of some sort.
Sure.
And the general gist is you pick a person. Each person wagers however many beads they want. Depends up to them. They pick a card of the two they're given face down, and then they say something about themselves. It could be a truth, it could be a lie, it could be anything. But whoever's right, they get all of the reward, and then they add it to their kind of their stack of Mardi Gras beads that they're collecting. But like little games like those, like I just was very excited of the idea of creating an experience for people when I was younger.
That sounds like an
I was
amazing icebreaker, even, for like a corporate event or even a party or things like that, too, eh?
That was actually one of the reasons why we came up with that
Yeah.
idea, because it was supposed to break the ice. It was supposed to get people engaged, and the stories that comes with it too also is entertaining.
Yeah. And so you're doing these games along the way, and then at what point did you start thinking that this is something you want to do like seriously? Like, was it like, were you involved with Kickstarter and were you like investing in other people's games and did that kind of get you hooked in, or how did you kind of the whole Kickstarter thing come about and, finally taking that next step and saying, okay, I'm not just going to make games for my friends and families, but I want to create one for realsies.
So 4 years ago, and the story is actually on my Kickstarter. I created, so 4 years ago, before I got married, I gave a gift to my groomsmen, and I didn't want to get like a watch or something generic. To me,
Yeah.
I'm just always that guy who's super creative. I have been for many years. And so for some reason, I had this idea, let's just make a board game and give that as a gift to my groomsmen. So I spent, I want to say, 8 months coming up with the idea, the design, the concept. That was the original Savage, a Game of Survival.
Hmm.
So I got all the components, got the box, everything all sorted out. I even had a picture at the very bottom of the Kickstarter. You'll see an image of what the original box and some of the cards looked like. Very, very simple stuff, nothing too crazy. And not too much has changed. There's plenty of things that have been modified, but I decided after I made the game, and when me and my close friends had played the game, family and so forth, I decided, you know what? I've always been wanting to do design full time. I wanted to devote a lot more and invest that opportunity to learn and engage that type of industry.
Yeah.
So I decided back in the start of 2020, I'm going to just go ahead and start creating my own company and make this a real thing.
Oh wow.
That's what led the journey.
When you created that first prototype, were you using Game Crafter, or how did you make the game?
No cards and piece of paper. There was nothing really. I think the first ever prototype I made was me taking some of my trading cards and just sliding a piece of paper with just some writing on it. It
Yeah.
was very generic stuff. I didn't buy out, some products like white cards and filled them out.
Yeah.
That it just was as simple as writing on a piece of paper.
It's amazing what you can do even with sleeves, right? And I talked to Joe Slack about this a lot, and you see this if you go to any proto spiels. You see a lot of people do this. They'll take just a blank white card, so you have some rigidity. They'll put that in a sleeve, maybe a Euro size or a bridge deck size sleeve, and then they'll do very rudimentary artwork. They'll slide on either side of that piece of paper to create a card, right? Then you can shuffle them. There's some rigidity and so forth. But what's cool about that is it allows you to make a change on the spot, right? So if you're doing prototyping or you're doing like a playtest with somebody and you figure out on the spot something's not working or something needs to change, or maybe I need to change the point value on that card or increase the point value on that card, you can literally pull the pen, pull the piece of paper out, make the change and slide it back in and say, okay, let's go again and see how that works. So it is amazing how efficient that is in helping you kind of iterate as you go along in a very tactile way, right?
Oh, for sure. And I mean, I had so many sleeves lying around. I thought I'm just going to go ahead and take advantage of this. And even in the process, when I was coming up with the mechanics, I mean, just trying to mark all of them on piece of paper. Eventually, I had to upgrade to
Yeah.
some Excel and do some mathematics, some serious stuff, and then eventually got that to work.
Yeah.
And then after seriously diving in deep to the Excel, mathematics and formula, I was able to come up with the right percentages. And as I got closer with the testing, eventually I felt comfortable going to new people, new players, and complete strangers trying out the game without my influence whatsoever, them just trying it out and them giving me very good positive feedback. The game took about 3 years to fully develop.
Mm.
And that was just a lot of efforts from local communities. Even nowadays, every Wednesday at 6:30 here in Arizona, at a place called Silver Key Lounge, myself and other game designers, we actually meet there with other people who are interested in trying prototypes, and we'll prototype our games right there at the lounge.
Oh, that's cool.
And that's a great way for new gamers, game designers, to jump into the industry, learn things on their own, get the feedback that they want without having to question things on their own or with their personal close friends or so and so forth.
No, that's cool. What do you do when you're not board gaming? Like, what's your day job? Like, what do you do that's outside of doing this cool thing called making board games?
So my background is in engineering. I'm a civil engineer by trade, but for the last 10 years, I've been in the construction realm.
Nice.
Right now, I am a project manager as a consultant for Intel.
Oh
So for
wow.
me, my background is project management. Anything that deals with managing product delivery, making sure we finish things on time,
Yeah.
construction efforts, tasks, and overall management. That's where my background and skill set comes from, with of course the skill sets of engineering in my background too.
I tell you, if there is any skill that's transferable to launching a board game and publishing a board game, project management is pretty much it, right? If you want any skill at all, that's the one you want to have, because it allows you to keep things on track and pull all the pieces together and kind of, sort through the confusion, which can sometimes happen, right? When you're trying to cobble through something, especially if it's your first time through publishing a game. There's a
Oh yeah.
lot of little elements, right? You got to try to pull in. And, gosh, what a great career to have as a skill set you can leverage over. I think that's awesome.
Oh, for sure. And for me, the biggest element to that is like the back end, right? So
Yeah.
after you have gotten excited about a project, you want to pledge it, you're thinking to yourself, okay, the duration of the shipping, and what if something happens, and oh, are they gonna charge me unexpected fees? I've been there, done that, as far as
Oh,
witnessing
yeah.
it as a backer when I do my pledges. And
Yeah.
so for me, the edge that I have is that when I went through the development of Savage: A Game of Survival, I've already was in negotiations with the manufacturer talking about price and shipping options. And so the edge that I have is that I'm going to be able to receive samples, and I already have all of my files qualified through the manufacturer in advance. So we're not just selling an idea, we're selling the actual product.
I think it's almost the cost of entry now, to be quite candid, right? Like there in, you're now interview 192, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there's been, I know at least 2 times when I was talking to somebody, then, either on air or off air talking, I said, how's the manufacturing? Like who are you using to do your manufacturing? And the response is, well, we're going to figure that out after the campaign's done. I'm like, what? Like, what? Like, I could see that being the model 15 years ago, but now, man, you got to make sure you've got your ducks in a row, right? Before you hit launch on that Kickstarter campaign, or you can set yourself up for a whole world of hurt. Things like costs, as you know, container costs, right? Gone through the roof. Manufacturing cost. You change something in your game, but you haven't talked to your manufacturer about what the impact of that cost could be. That could hit you. Saying, hey, let's throw something cool into our box because it's going to, benefit all of our backers, not realizing that puts you over the weight bracket into the very next, shipping weight bracket. I mean, even just fulfillment to backers can jack your costs up 20%, right? So it's really, really crucial. If there's somebody out there listening, thinking about getting into publishing a game, please, for the love of God, get all that organized ahead of time before you launch. And I always quote Jamie Stagmeyer on this. And again, I always encourage people to go to his website, stonemeyergames.com. Check out his blogs. It is paint by numbers. He gives you so many tips and tricks on how to go about doing this from A to Z. And the one thing I read in his book that I really took to heart was that if you delay your campaign because you're not ready, nothing bad is going to happen. Nothing bad. But if you launch and you're not quite ready, or you launch maybe a week or 2 weeks earlier and say, you set an artificial timeline, that you're trying to stick to, you can cause yourself a lot of heartache, right? Which is unnecessary just by saying, well, you know what, I'm not going to be held to this artificial timeline I've given myself. I'll push my campaign out 2 weeks and give myself a little more breathing space. And that's okay. It's not really going to impact anything, right? So.
No, I 100% agree. I mean, I got to the point where I was doing this game for 3 years, and I was noticing myself being nitpicky to the point where I was wondering, okay, am I going to launch it now? I've actually pushed the date maybe 4 or 5 times and totally worth it. Needs to happen. And going back to kind of the quality of the product and making sure you do all of the back end stuff ahead of time. I mean, you're right. I agree. It should be the bare minimum for any company. Now, there's probably a wiggle room there if you're talking a large project that doesn't have to be fully fanned out, but for the majority of what needs to be done, then that's probably, there's probably some wiggle room there. One of the things, and I'm kind of diving into Kickstarter here, is I wanted to try something a little different than a lot of what I've read on online forums, books, and so forth. And so for me, the one thing I tried different, and you'll notice it on the Kickstarter page, I have a section where it talks about the components, and there's an area that's called component highlights. And so what I did was, instead of me bringing it up as a form of a stretch goal or me wanting to highlight it throughout a period of time, I just went ahead and was just full transparent. I talked about how I have linen cards for the standard size cards. I talked about how I have black core. I talked about how I have a large 25 millimeter die. I emphasized, and also not only that, but the plastic insert tray, which will hold everything, including all of your standard size cards sleeved. And I wanted to take this opportunity to be upfront, transparent about the quality of the game and what you're buying. So for me, when you buy this product, I know that from what the highlighted components are and what's included in the game, it's going to last a long period of time, including with things like if you decide to sleeve your game, not to say that you need to, but you have extra compartment space if you wanted to get the upgraded tokens, or maybe at a later date if I decide to add more cards in the future. It provides a lot more flexibility in that regards. But the highlight components was something I use as a tactic to see if I could try something different on Kickstarter.
Yeah. That's funny. Sleeving cards. I had a campaign where I had a backer reach out and say, I just want to check, is that tray, is it going to fit the cards with the sleeves on them? And my answer is like, of course it will. And get on the phone right away with the manufacturer. Okay, we need to adjust our tray, boys.
And I'll tell you this, like, The sleeves in the box itself, I personally, I enjoy the idea of like trading cards.
Yeah,
Trading card games is like my background, right? Doing a lot of that over the
sure.
years, and so that's normal for me. Board games, I don't often sleeve my components, but there have been times where, like for my Dominion copies, I have them sleeved with transparent sleeves, and they're just typical penny sleeves. um, so for me, I gave it as an option, again trying something different with the product development, and I felt that that upgraded modification to the tray was something advantageous, at least for the backers.
So Savage, which is start off with your groomsmen, I guess, for your wedding, and then this turned into this passion project now.
Hmm.
Can you explain to us a little bit about how you play this game? So it's a social deduction game at its root, I guess, right? Is the easiest way
It
to
falls
describe it.
within that realm.
Yeah.
That's correct.
So how does somebody go about playing this game? If you could use a script of words to those who are listening and not necessarily watching, how would somebody go about playing Savage?
So, just the general theme is that you and a bunch of strangers are trying to survive the apocalypse. And beggars can't be choosers because the team you have, let's just say, you have no way of seeking for new help. This is the best A team you're going to find.
Mm-hmm.
But unfortunately, some of those people among your team are secretly traitors who believe the best way to eliminate, or the best way to survive the apocalypse is by eliminating survivors that, let's just face it, we need them to be killed through natural selection. We got a new civilization we have to form. After all, the apocalypse is already happening in their minds, so they're just trying to help humanity at this point. So you have two different identities, survivors and traitors. The survivors objective is to ensure that they survive all 4 rounds. Even if the survivors survive with them, survivors win, the traitors lose. Additionally, if they do not fulfill that objective, if they feel like they can't make it all 4 rounds, the other alternative is for them to eliminate a traitor. Now, in this game, each player gets 3 heart tokens.
Mm.
And if you lose a life, you just flip a heart token face down. Once you lose all 3, no matter how many players, it could be one, it could be multiple players at the same time. Once any player is eliminated, the game ends. So that's the objective for the survivors. The traders, all they need to do is eliminate a survivor, but there's a catch. And the catch is they don't care who they eliminate as long as a survivor is among them. So natural selection didn't exclude their fellow trader partners, if you know what I'm
Mm.
saying. And it's a different twist in that instead of primarily focusing on the deduction side of who is good, who is bad, the game does it does a good job in focusing on the cooperativeness and the deception side of what traders are doing behind the scenes.
Mm.
And with the options and the choices that you have in the game, such as scavenging for resources, using medicine to heal people, and contributing to a food, what we call a food stockpile, in hopes there's enough food to feed each player. We hope that in enough rounds you're able to survive long enough to be rescued, which is the main premise and the concept of that game.
So when I was watching some of the playthroughs, I thought it was kind of cool that the I guess there's a leader every round is elected. Is that how that works, or it just goes in play turn order, or how's that work with the leader that sets the
So with
events?
the leader, it's interesting. In my game, the leader is actually the player who contributes the most cards in the food stockpile. The
Okay,
leader is based on bidding. Whoever bids the most cards with the resources in their hands, they become El Jefe.
got it. So they set they draw, I guess, an event, and then that event has to be resolved based on the resources that are required on it, right?
That's correct. So after
Yeah.
everyone conducts their turn, the new leader, whoever puts the most cards in the food pile, would gather those cards, shuffle them face down, and then would read the event card, which then they can openly read what the fail or the survive outcome is to the public. And then they would pick a team based on what the table to the right side of the event card would say.
Mm.
And then if there are votes, there's a vote of confidence, the vote of confidence to the team, or if you trust the leader, because the leader gets to decide who eats after the end of the round. It's funny with the leader too, and this is something that always blows people's minds, is that assuming there's say 7 players,
Yeah.
and let's say there's 20 food in the food stockpile, the leader has the power to starve as many people as they want, regardless of how much food is in that food stockpile.
So they can give all the food to one person.
Or they could starve everyone, including themselves. I mean, the choice is really theirs. The only caveat is if I'm the leader and say one player among the group is at 1 heart,
Yeah.
if I were to choose to starve that player, it does go to a majority vote.
So they can overrule you and say, no, 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 no,
That's correct.
you're not gonna
But
off
now
that person. You're obviously the traitor, right?
that's correct. And one of the things too is that in this game, it definitely has the option for players who do play as traders to choose to sabotage openly. I've seen countless times where some traders, they feel like it's the best way to win by, trying to eliminate a survivor by becoming the leader, outbidding for leadership, and then just starving everyone but themselves. So for them, it's just going closer to their objective,
Yeah.
and it's thematic to what their objective is. Plus, it adds a lot more tensity and excitement for the players, and great conversation and dialogue.
If you don't achieve the event, so say you don't have enough resources, does everybody take a health hit in that case, or?
So, assuming that if the group, let's say you needed 4 people and there's 8 of you, and you don't have 4 people who have, say, a weapon,
Right.
you still, as the leader, have to select a team. It doesn't happen very often when that does happen, but in that case, what ends up happening is the outcome is you still have to sacrifice a resource from your hand because of the event that took place, and then you would have to optimize how that fail text should be implemented. Which is kind of another thing about this game is failure doesn't necessarily mean failure in the sense that you lose or you win. Failure is just another outcome that you have to survive or overcome. It's taking the idea of passing or failing events and just saying, what really matters is there enough food? Is there enough food? Are you guys healthy? Because at the end of the day, if it's the 4th round and everyone's at 1 health, listen, you guys did your best and you made it. You got rescued.
No, that's cool. You have this thing in your campaign that I haven't really seen a lot of, this backer gift concept. Can you talk to us a little bit about that? So the way I read it is literally every day for like 9 days, you're just throwing in like an add-on essentially
That's
for the
right.
backers. Is that how that works, or can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So the 9 day giveaway is focused primarily on whoever backs the project, whether they did the $30 early bird special or above, they will get a free thing that we're giving away each day. And it's a spoiler. I do a post about it every day, and it's just something you're going to get for free. You don't have to do anything else, nothing special. It's just me saying thank you for backing my first Kickstarter. And of course, if whoever pledges up until the last day, they will qualify and be able to get that as well for free. Everything that's listed under the backer gifts is just what you're going to get with the game or whatever you purchase as far as your tiers,
Mm-hmm.
as long as you spend $30 or more.
Oh, that's cool. And I noticed that you did have is it a deluxe, or like how do you get the wood tokens? Because I know a lot of people are often saying, I like the punch outs, but I want I want either wood or metal if it's available.
Yeah, the black walnut tokens, oh my God, they look so good. I actually
Yeah.
got samples. Unfortunately, it's not with me right now, but the black, so they are printed, they're ink printed on the wood. They look so clean, so smooth. You can have it as an add-on if you want. It's $28
Hmm.
to add the tokens to your package. But honestly, if you really want a good deal, consider the upgraded package, which is you're getting the game and the tokens and sleeves in addition. If you were actually
Mm.
to break out the add-ons separately with the base game itself, you're actually spending more money than if you pledge for a higher amount. I made it that way so that you can get more savings if you do an upgrade or a platinum package. The same thing for platinum. The only difference with platinum is that you get the tokens, the sleeves, the game, and a large 2 foot by 3 foot. It's like 90 centimeters by 60 centimeters mat.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, I know. And so does everything fit in the box?
Everything but the mat.
Okay.
So the tokens will fit in the box. You can sleeve all the cards that you get. You get 150 transparent sleeves. The
Oh, wow.
sleeves themselves are customed.
Mm.
So typical penny sleeves, it actually shows on the Kickstarter what they're normally thickness wise,
Hmm.
but we actually show what the real thickness is for our sleeves and how they're almost 3 times as thick. So high quality will keep your components protected. Again, if you choose to opt into the sleeves.
For people who are having aspirations of launching a game of their own someday, and listening to someone like yourself, where this is your kind of your first time through, what is some advice you would offer to maybe another game developer out there that is considering going on Kickstarter with their game? What are some things that you would say, hey, this is something you guys should really consider when you kind of first approach this?
Oh man, that's tough. There's just so many
Just
things.
give me one.
I'll give it to you, James. So here's what my advice would be. All right. If you're going to create a game and you are in love with that game, you love how it plays, you've tested it with a bunch of people, now you're ready to consider planning for Kickstarter. You My recommendation is start the art process. Start with a theme and an art process that you enjoy. Most times when you get into the art side, you want to do something that maybe relates to the theme of the game. If you decide to go the route with the IP route, to go for something in that regards that's noticeable by a lot of people, that's also a good direction. But whatever it is, get your art sorted out and have a few, start the process early and reach out to people on social media and build a following,
Mm,
because the art plus discussing about the game, even prototyping your game, anything as far as a post, an update, anything like that, start building up that list of followings. You should theoretically start that list a year in advance.
yeah.
I mean, that way you are really giving yourself a chance of getting as many people to back the project as quickly as you can. For myself, I was a bit too nitpicky. I was so focused on the art and the components and qualifying the mechanics, that I actually ended up focusing on marketing. I want to say like maybe 3-4 months prior to the launch, which in reality is that people say that it's reasonable, but honestly, you should start that in a year
Yeah.
prior to the launch of your Kickstarter.
No, that's good advice. I think it's Brendan McCaskill that was saying to me last time he did Mythwin, and we're talking about some of his advertising he was doing. And one thing I thought he did was really clever is they would take a concept of a cover and they put that on, throw like 20, $30 on Facebook and just see like an A/B test of, do you like this or do you like this? And based on people signing up, would give them an idea of, okay, this is definitely a direction over here where it's going to engage more people. Um, Long, and as you said, like a year before, they're even ready to start kind of, fine tuning things, even just with taking stock photography and, just mocking something up. Is this a concept that people find interesting? Well, good way to test that is just put a little bit of money behind some ads and see what kind of engagement you get, right?
Oh, for sure. And kind of to touch on that as well, one of the things about my particular experience is that since my game is much more for larger groups, I think that has another lingering effect. If you create a game that's a 1 to 4 player game, I think that hits a lot harder to a broader audience. When you start getting into the group style games, that takes a lot more people. It's going to definitely be a different experience with trying to draw in your audience. So just that, be mindful of that too. I don't think many people talk too much about how the player count on a game, how that differs for the marketing or the outreach efforts.
Mm,
So that's another thing I would, just as a suggestion, because I did the large party group type of style
yeah.
game, and I didn't know what to kind of get into at that point. I just knew that for me, I felt that I had a great game that was very enjoyable. People really had fun playing the game, testing the game in multiple conventions I've attended, and
Yeah.
I've met some amazing friends along the way.
No, that's cool. What's the minimum player count on your game? I didn't ask. Is it 3, 4? Like, what's the minimum number of
It
should
is
play?
4 players,
All
so it
right.
plays 4 to 10 players. The
Nice.
more players you play, the more enjoyable it is. You got much more opportunities for deduction and, or not deduction so much, but deception, and really just having a blast with your friends. Honestly, that would always be my recommendation.
Oh, that's awesome.
Another thing about the game for Savage Game Survival is that, just like the hidden identity roles, um, there are 2 ways to play the game. You can play it standard mode, where the traders would actually know one another. We do a thing called a traders meeting, and that's when they conspire against the group and everyone closes their eyes and they see one another.
Yeah,
But there's insomnia mode. That's where the traders have no idea who their fellow traders are,
that's
and
cool.
you just proceed with the game. And it's an awesome game experience to play when you do it that way as well.
No, that's sweet. Is there like what's the next steps from here? Like this is your first kind of game out of the out of the gate. Like, are you working on some other stuff, or is there another game coming after this one, or is the focus just on this right now, or kind of where are you going from here?
So as I approach closer to the end of the Kickstarter,
Yeah.
I do have some plans for a couple of projects I like to work on. I mean, for me, my main goal, my business model is to take a genre or a concept of the game and try to add a different gameplay experience, one that will provide you a different opportunity or sensation similar to other games in that similar genre. And for now, my main goal is to focus on getting this thing all sorted out for Savage Game Survival, getting
Sure.
everything in the progress. But I also am considering what is the best path for how to launch the next project. I'm taking this opportunity to self-reflect on the experience of the Kickstarter and also my my outreach, and that may actually sway how I systematically figure out that approach after the Kickstarter.
The one thing I would say from my experience in talking to other publishers as well, doing this myself, the biggest piece of advice I give to someone that's finishing a Kickstarter campaign is, as soon as it closes, take a moment to pause and reflect back on what just happened through that campaign and jot down all the possible learning you can, because you would think you're going to remember, but it fades quick, right? So you want to get the immediacy of it. So as soon as the campaign finishes, jot down all learnings you have, put it in a journal, reflect back on that. And I do this. I'll go back and read my notes, or sometimes I'll even do a video. I'll do a post-game video, and then I'll go back and I'll watch that before my next campaign about a month or two ahead of time, just to see if there's anything I forgot that I had learned. And it's amazing when you do that, how many things will start getting really embedded up here that you got to keep doing each time. Yeah.
Yeah, I have like a little book. I feel like, man, I'd never have stuff that I want at the time.
Your props.
But I have this book where I actually all my props. I like writing my notes down and stuff like that. And that actually, once I actually go through the process of doing that self-reflection and really sitting down and narrow focusing on all of that, that's going to help me kind of sort out what the next steps are. But I mean, I have a couple of games in mind of things that I'd like to develop, but it really is going to come down to what is the best one to issue based on timing and also the Kickstarter. But yeah, I got a couple of game projects that I want. I have one that I've been working on during the campaign, and I have another one that's like on the back burner. But I'm starting to like I did all this work on this one, and I'm looking at this other one going, oh, this one would be just so cool to work on. So I'm torn, but at the same time, it's like I got to pick whichever one I end up going with. I feel like I'll just stick with it and see where it takes me.
Well, if there's anyone out there listening that loves these kind of social deduction games like I do, I mean, I love these kind of games, especially if you have a bunch of people over and you're having a party. What a great way to do ice breaking with people and get people kind of up and animated and into the game genre. Check out the show notes for this podcast. We'll have a link directly to the Kickstarter page, or go to Kickstarter and just do a quick search for Savage. It'll pop up. So, Jay, thanks again so much for your time coming on our podcast. Congrats again on this campaign. You've doubled your funding goal, so it's going to be interesting to see where you guys finally end up, but I'm sure you're very pleased with where you're at already, and I can't wait to see what else is coming from you guys.
Me too, man. And hey, I'd like to make a proposition if you're interested. So I know you have some games you developed, and I have Savage Game of Survival. Would you be willing to do a trade? I get one of your games and you get one of my games, huh? Would you be willing to do that?
We'll talk off air.
Got it.
All the best, eh?
We'll see. Potential. Thank you so much.
All right, buddy. You take care.
For having me on.
Cheers, man.
Take care, man.
Ciao.
Cheers.
This has been an episode of the Board Game Binge podcast, hosted by James Staley, produced by James Staley and Mike Bruner, with original music by Nick Smith. If you would like to watch these interviews live, simply subscribe to our YouTube channel, Board Game Binge, and you'll get access to live interviews, giveaways, and interesting board game content from across the industry. I can't wait for you to join us. See you next time.